how do we get from this frightening picture of the devil that can invade bodies and tempt souls and cause the weather to be sort of horrible and really hurt people's, damage people's lives, take their lives? How do we get from that fearful image to a figure that we can stick on a Belgian beer bottle, right? Duvel is named after the devil. It's one of my favorite beers. Or have the devil be in Halloween costumes, or a Lil Nas X song, or in a South Park movie. How do we get from there to here? Now, there are lots of ways that one can think about that. But what I really would like to stress is that the sort of relegation of the devil to the realm of symbol, to the realm of metaphor, and sort of the decline of the devil in terms of strict theological belief, that has been a slow and very incomplete patchwork process. That is to say, there was no Enlightenment light switch that someone turned on and said, well, done with demonic belief across the board. But what we did have happen is in the late 17th and into the 18th centuries, you had a growing number of learned intellectuals who started to ask critical questions about the devil, about the sort of core beliefs about what the devil was able to do. And they started to look at things like the witchcraft trials and say, do we really believe all of these witches were flying to Sabbath under the cover of night and having sex with Satan? Is that really what we think was going on? Do we really think it was demonic magic that caused the harm of these crops? And instead, they posited that there were perhaps other explanations, that maybe there were natural forces at play, that maybe some of these accused witches were just poor old women. And this was a small group, but increasingly they had the space in print, in intellectual circles, in urban spaces to make those arguments. And the witch trials themselves by the latter part of the 17th century declined. And when the witch trials declined, you had fewer people standing up and making confession to doing all of these demonic deeds. And you had less fuel for the sort of self-legitimating discourse of demonology. And to some extent, that causes this slow decline, again, primarily among small circles of intellectual elites. And eventually, you did have, by the late 18th, 19th, and into the 20th century, some people wonder if the devil was actually a cosmological, otherworldly being that wreaked havoc on Earth, or if really the devil was about some fundamentally human evil, if the devil existed really in our hearts rather than externally. And I think my point here is that belief in Satan has declined in some ways in the same way that it rose, with people trying to seek understanding for why evil exists, why bad things happen, why misfortune maybe has befallen them in some ways. And evil, as we move into the modern era, remained a potent, monstrous, frightening problem. It's just that it was a more human and less cosmic one. And by the time you get into the 18th century, you have figures like David Hume and Voltaire and others really openly writing criticism about the devil. There's a famous, about traditional ideas writ large, there's a famous anecdote about Voltaire, the famous French philosopher, and supposedly, and I think this is probably more fiction than fact, but supposedly when he was laying on his deathbed in the late 1770s, the priest came to see him to administer last rites, right? France was a Catholic country, and even though Voltaire was a noted skeptic who advocated tolerance, he still was going to receive those last rites. So the priest came and said, Voltaire, you're a dying man. Now is the time for you to renounce Satan as part of your last rites. And Voltaire looked at the priest and said, now, my good man, this is no time for making enemies.